Hey guys, welcome back to Tiny House Customs. In the next few videos, I'm going to show you how to frame a wall, plywood it, Tyvek it, build a gable end, and stand it up and nail it in place. Sounds good to me. So the first thing I got to do is cut my studs. Now I've already figured out my stud height, which is an important step. I have several videos where I talk about stud height. There's a link for both of those in the description below. So I've already braced this wall off in the back, so I can take this brace down so I can stand this wall up without any, there's a word. There's probably a really good word to use, obstructions. That's it. When I build houses professionally, I saw a lot of marriages end. Well, I can't say a lot. I saw one marriage end because of the house build. So with that said, grab yourself a nice cocktail. Relax. It's not that stressful. I'm in no rush because as soon as I get all these walls up and the roof on, I'm done for a couple months. So I have all my studs laid out here. I'm going to mark them at 9'7" and 1/8", which in my case is the stud height of the wall for the short wall in the back of my tiny house. I'm going to use my speed square and square those across. When you're cutting your lumber, you got to make sure that you're on the right side of that line. If you were to cut it on this side of the line, the blade creates a cut and it's called a kerf. And that kerf removes a small amount of material. So I don't want these studs to be short. I want them to be all the exact same size. So I'm going to make sure I stay on the correct side of that line when I cut them. All these cut-offs I'm going to save because I'm going to need blocks, cripples, different things, and these come in handy. I'm going to take all my studs and I'm going to put them on each of the X's that I have on my plates. I'm going to stand them up, make sure they're running square to that plate. Since I don't have a blueprint and I'm not sure what my jacks and my sill is going to be yet for my window, I'm going to nail all the studs to the plate and then I'll figure out my jacks. So when I'm nailing these studs, I want to make sure that I'm flush on top, that my line, I'm good with my line right here, and I'm going to put 2 nails in it. Now those 2 nails are about 3/4 inches down and up from the ends of the plates. So you can see on this wall I have a 2x6 on the flat like this. What this does is it allows me to insulate behind this wall, and the reason that's like that is because I'm going to have a 2x4 wall sitting right here. So I'm going to have backing on the inside of this wall for my 3/4 inch tongue and groove. So on this wall right here I have another wall running into this wall, and I had written down 2x6 right here, so I know I'm going to have to put a 2x6 on the flat just like I did on that wall over there. So that 2x6, I want to make sure that it's flush on the inside of that wall. So I'm going to put my weight on this wall right here. I'm going to push down on that 2x6 and I'll nail it in. And same thing when I'm going down the stud. I'm going to put some weight on that 2x6, some weight on the stud, and I'll nail it in. I'm going to put a nail about every 2 feet. Wow, I almost shot myself. I'm not going to do that couch in that little corner. I'm going to do a desk. And so to figure out my desk height, well, I want the window to be just a little bit above my desk height. So I'm just going to sit down. I'll measure from the ground to where I think my desk is going to be. Right about here maybe, and I'll come up just a few inches, so 3 feet. Yeah, so I'll go 3 feet to the top of my sill, and if I do decide to put a couch in there instead, the couch is only going to come up to about 2 feet, so I'll still be fine with that height. Now you can see that I'm doing that elevated floor right here, and this is going to be my floor height. So on top of that 3 feet, I need to add this right here, which is 29 inches. So that gives me 5'5". So I can mark 5'5", and that'll be the top of my sill. I also need to come down 1.5 inches for my my thickness of my sill, and that'll give me my cripple length of 5'3½". So I'll write that down. So from the top of my sill, I'd like to go 4 feet for my window, but I'm not going to be able to because I need to have a structural header in here. Structural header is going to be 2 2x6s. And that is going to be 5.5 inches thick. So if I come down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 inches and mark that. So I can also measure from my header while I'm up here, and it's 4'1/2 inch. When you're framing your headers, they need to be a structural header. Since all exterior walls on a tiny house are a load-bearing wall, you need to have a structural header. A lot of people I've seen take two 2x4s, nail them together, and place them on the flat like this, and use that as a header. This is not structurally rated. This is against code. One reason we're getting a lot of slack for tiny houses is because we're not building them to standard building codes. I'm going to use 2x6 for my headers. Now, if I were to nail two 2x6s together like this, it's only going to equal 3 inches, and I'm going to have a 1/2 inch gap here. So what I'm going to do is take a 1/2 inch sheet of plywood, I'll place it in between the two sheets, and I'll nail it together. So I need to rip this 1/2 inch sheet of plywood at 5.5 inches. Hey, thumbs up for all the camera angles, eh? What do you say? So when I'm making my header, I'm going to put that plywood down, and then the 2x6, the other 2x6 on top, I'm going to make sure I'm flush on all 4 sides. I'm going to place one nail in the top corner on one end, and then I'll check the other ends, flush it up, and I'll put another nail there. Now if you had something over 4 feet, I would do a nail in the middle, just in case these boards have crowns in them. You want to make sure it's flush on the whole length of the board. When I'm nailing it up, I'm going to put 2 nails every foot. And there's my structural header. So I'm going to nail my header up. I'm going to make sure I'm flush on all points here, and then I'm up tight to that top plate. And place one nail here. I'll make sure it's tight there. And then I'm going to go back and put between 6 and 8 nails into that header. Now I need to carry the load from this header. What a header does is any weight that's pushing down on top of it, it carries that weight out towards the jacks, and the jacks carry the weight down to the bottom of the trailer. So if I measure from the bottom of my king stud to the bottom of the header, I have 109 and 9/16. When I'm nailing my jack up, I want to make sure that I'm flush everywhere around here. And I'm going to place 2 nails every about 16 inches. Now since I'm using 3 1/4 inch nails, if I were to shoot straight in, they're going to stick out the end, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to put a slight angle on my nail gun so the nail doesn't shoot out the other side. If your jack isn't sitting flush with the top here and you need to bring it up, you can take your hammer, stick it underneath the jack like that, and if you really needed to move it up, you can just roll your hammer like that and it'll lift it up. Typically you won't. Once you get it flush, you can nail it. Did you see that? The nail missed, hit my leg right there and went that way. Let the safety Sally comment away. So at this point, I basically framed a doorway. So if you had a doorway, this is exactly how you would frame a doorway. Since it's a window, I'm now going to put in cripples and a sill, which will support the window. Now since I want this window to be perfectly square, I'm going to measure from inside to inside to figure out what I have for the width, which was 45.5. And then I'm going to measure down from the bottom of the header to 45.5. And I'll also go another 1.5 inches for my sill thickness. Once I have that mark, I can figure out my cripple length, which is 62 5/8. I'm going to need to cut this sill for in between the jacks. I don't want to measure where the sill is going to go because these studs could be bowing out or bowing in. So I want to take my measurements from a fixed object. So this right here is not going to change. It's 45.5. I'll also check the bottom to make sure I have 45.5, and then I'll cut that and place it in here. If I have to push this king stud and jack in to make it fit, that's what I'll do. So I have all my cripples and sills cut. I'm going to take my sill and place it down at the bottom plate, and I'm going to transfer my cripple mark onto the sill. That way I know that these cripples are running square with the wall. There's different ways you can frame. Obviously there's going to be variations in framing. I've seen a lot of people cut the sill, or I'm sorry, cut the jack out right here, and the sill runs into the king stud, and then the jack sits on top of that. I just think this is a stronger way of framing. I just add an extra cripple next to the jack. It's going to add a little bit of weight, but I'm not concerned with weight because I'd rather have a structurally strong house than a light house. Not a lighthouse, but a lighter. You know what I mean. So my cripples I'm going to nail the exact same way I nailed all my studs. When I nail my sill up, I nail 2 into the cripple, and I also want to put 2 toenails into the jack on both sides. So right here I have a top plate. I need to add an extra one, which is I call a top plate. Now what a top plate does is it ties the side walls into this wall. Since this wall runs inside of the red line, I need this top plate to run 3.5 inches longer so that I can tie it into this longer wall. On the other side, the tall wall runs past it, so I'm just going to go flush. If all 4 of your walls were the same height, you would want to have it tied in on all 4 corners. A lot of the 2x that you're going to use is going to have wane in it. Wane is that rounded edge on the board. I always want to try to hide that wane inside of the framing. So if I were to place this up like this, that wane is going to be on the top of the board. Now sometimes we have to walk on top of these walls, and the larger material you have to walk on, the better. So this right here would be a little bit smaller. It also doesn't look nice, doesn't give you a straight edge. There's no reason I can't take that wane, place it against this 2x4 so that it's hidden inside of the framing. So since this wall is running into the longer wall, I'm just going to hold it flush on the end and place 2 nails. I'm going to put 2 nails every 16 inches down the length of it. I don't want to just go down there and nail the end because this right here might not be flush. So I'm going to get it flush and nail it in. Once I have that point nailed in, I can go back and nail the end of this. Then I can come down here, nail this. I also want to check to make sure that I stayed at that 3.5 inches, which is perfect. So at this point, this wall is ready to get raised up. If you wanted to, you could raise this wall up and build all your walls just like this kinda, and then you could square them up or level them up, and then come back and sheet them and Tyvek them and build your gable end. So to save myself a lot of time, I'm going to build my gable end on it. Then I'm going to come back, I'm going to square the wall up so that it's perfectly square, and then I'll plywood it, Tyvek it, and I'll stand it up with my overhang built into it. So I don't have to go up and down a ladder 300 times to finish this wall. It'll be pretty much done. I'll only have to go up the ladder 2 times to get the ends finished. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. If you will, hit the subscribe button, thumbs up, and if you would like to, top right corner, make a donation. Thanks for watching, guys.